What is this game, though? What are we playing right now? Could this be? Could this be the return of Call of Warhammer Beginning of the End Times? The greatest Warhammer mod to ever grace this series of tubes we call the interwebs? It is indeed. We're busting out the nostalgia feels here as Khorne Daemonkin and the Ogre Kingdoms face off on this glorious mod for Medieval 2 Total War. And we've got a Hell Cannon dropping hot, sticky loads of Hellfire, Ectoplasm, and ground-up souls across the battlefield, and it might just force the big boys to come to us. But of course, these are two very melee-focused factions. That was going to be their game plan anyway. They want to get stuck in. And pound for pound, unit for unit, no faction Warhammer hits harder than the Ogres. Iron Guts and Rhinox Riders are the poster boys for that. They are vicious, and they are tough to bring down. Firebellies are the priests of the Firemouth, channeling flame like the volcanoes of their homeland, and they'll be supporting what we might call an Ogre Death Star, or a Gut Star, if you want to be a bit more flavorful and precise. This is a straight-up ball of mollywopping. They're going to get stuck in, and they're going to grind you into pulp. It's a full melee rush build of Ogre Bulls, Iron Guts, some Noblar Meat Shields, and an awesome-looking Battle Standard Bearer in the center of all of it. With, of course, the best monstrous cavalry in all of Warhammer Fantasy in the Rhinox Riders. Hope we get to see them make their debut in Warhammer 3. It's definitely not a guarantee because they're from Forge World, but I think some fun things could be done if both them and Mournfangs made their way in. And across the Spice Dunes of Araby, we have the Khorne Daemonkin, a host of mortals and beings from the Warp, and some of the meanest, most malevolent creatures in the setting. Marauders, Chaos Warriors, Hell Cannon for sniping out some high HP models, though it's very inaccurate, so not exactly the most reliable thing ever. Some Khorne Chosen Berserkers with their iconic helmets and dual axes, Chaos Knights, and all the way on the left flank of Khorne are the Bloodcrushers themselves, living forge metal and rage fused into terrifying demonic cavalry. Monstrous beasts, they will run over pretty much anything they get their hands on, except for Rhinox Riders, so we'll see how that goes. Now, Call of Warhammer is interesting in that it puts demons on a pedestal, makes them more expensive, and generally better in combat compared to their mortal counterparts. I don't fully agree with that design decision, but I understand it, at least from a lore perspective, because that's what followers of a Chaos God aspire to be, to ascend into demonhood, and it makes them feel more rare and exciting when you finally unlock them. Just saw the Fleshhounds of Khorne. Their leader, Karanak, is the Cerberus of Warhammer Fantasy, a three-headed guardian of the realms of chaos, and those were Skullcrushers, maybe my favorite unit. Same thing as Bloodcrushers, basically, but mounted by mortal champions rather than lesser demons. So there's only one game plan here. Try and target that implacable Ogre advance and give the Hell Cannon maybe a bit of time to immolate a few of the bastards before they get into the teeth of the Khornate army. Even Khorne Chosen will have a tough time taking on Bulls or Iron Guts up close and personal, and Marauders are going to have absolutely no chance. And they're really not going to tar pit very well either. They're going to pretty much get charged and rout seconds after combat has been initiated. So the Cav is going to be a huge factor here for both sides. And an infantry fight probably going to go the way of the Ogres, especially in this big blob of death. Standing in the path of an Ogre charge is pretty much to stare death in the face. Bloodcrushers going into the Iron Guts, and Rhinox Riders right up the center into the Chaos Warriors, and they can push all the way through, and their charge is literally the most devastating thing in this mod. It can completely obliterate an entire infantry formation off the impetus of that charge. Didn't seem to get that great full speed charge off there. Regardless, they're still going to absolutely murder anything they get their hands on early on. They've got like 6 HP or something. Taking them down is incredibly difficult. Now, I've been hyping up the Ogres quite a bit, but they do have a weakness, and that is that they are very low in model count and very expensive, so they can get swarmed. And in Medieval 2, when you get swarmed, you can get stun locked, so definitely the right call to operate in that huge block of monstrous infantry, and the impact of their charge is already being felt. Bunch of dead Chaos Knights out on the flank. On the hunt now, though, and those Firebellies are a juicy target, because their flames can decimate high-value units like the Bloodcrushers if they are given time to fire. So the Skullcrushers are going to come in from the other side. Noblar Meat Shields trying to block their charge, but not quite in the right position. And with the Skullcrushers on top of those mages, those priests of the Firemouth will start dropping like flies to the dual blades, Hellblades of Khorne and his champion. So that's not going to be too good for them. Gonna need to get some of those Iron Guts back there to reinforce, but they are pushing through the center so easily. And I'm not sure Halberds will be able to stop them either. Remember, in Medieval 2, bonus versus Cav applies to camels and horses and elephants, not to overblown infantry models. So it's the higher attack of the Halberds that might let them poke through those gut plates and disembowel some thick boys, but they aren't getting a bonus in that engagement and might be their death. Hell Cannon is way too far up, gonna have to retreat and maybe create some space to fire in, but with everything kind of already tied down in melee, there's pretty much guarantees of friendly fire if it even manages to get on target. And the Bloodcrushers are having free reign in the back to run over the Noblar meat shields, which is honestly exactly what they're good for, right? They have the nets to maybe slow down stuff and do a little bit of damage, but more than that, they just need to block charges and prevent those Iron Guts and Bulls from getting charged in the rear, because Bloodcrushers will put them in the dirt pretty quick if they get a clean charge bonus off into their rear. Firebellies, a couple of them managed to escape the clutches of those Skullcrushers, and the Rhinox Cavalry are still cutting a path of destruction through everything they touch. Scalpels and hammers and sickles and gut plates rending their way through the armor of Khorne, and Firebellies managing to skirt around and maybe get some shots into the flank, but there's so many ogres nearby that it'd probably be better off just moving to a different location and getting further away. Another cycle charge coming in from the Bloodcrushers of Khorne, and those demons are just having a field day, but they need to get those meat shields off the field. They finally routed, maybe some hammer and anvils soon to follow. Khorne's armies are battered and bloody at this point. The Death Star has been doing wonders in what has been a brutal display of CQB, but the Chaos Knights and Juggernaut units are still around. And the later this battle goes, the worse that is going to be for the Ogre Kingdoms. High Mass Cav in the late game in a mod like Beginning of the End Times can seal the deal. Rhinox Riders have a lot of pressure on their big flabby shoulders to put the team on their back door and win the war of mounted monsters. And that Hell Cannon shot arced right over their heads, going after the Rhinox Riders themselves. A BSB, Battle Standard Bearer, by himself, surrounded by halberds, and killing one of their number. That was pretty awesome. Last stand of the BSB. Shades of tabletop for sure. And back here, very important Cav engagement. Rhinox Riders, Skullcrushers, and Bloodcrushers with the remnants of those Flesh Hounds of Khorne nipping at their heels. Actually, the Skullcrushers are coming back from chasing off some of those routing Noblars and coming in from multiple angles. This is going to be a very tough fight for those Rhinox Riders. You're seeing them start to drop. To be fair, the Juggernaut units are also dropping pretty quick too. Chaos Knights only a handful of bottles left and jerking themselves off as they kind of finnick their way around those ogres. But yeah, it looks like a few of those Rhinox are starting to fall. And maybe the Over-Tyrant can get behind that Death Star and seek some solace in that huge block of flabby guts. You got a Firebelly over on this side, unleashing flame into the center of the remnants of those halberds. Not very many left. They got beaten to hell by all those Ogre infantry. And remember, this Death Star tactic is one that we've seen in Total War Warhammer and Total War Warhammer 2. Karen Wraith, Crypt Horror, and Invocation of the Heck Blobs were certainly a factor back then in Total War Warhammer 1. We're seeing it work out pretty well at the moment, but the cavalry fight is going the way of Khorne. Looks like the infantry fight going the way of the Ogres, but barely. Khorne Berserkers chosen in there. Bloodcrushers fighting the Rhinox and remnants of the Iron Guts, and the Over-Tyrant just fell to the Bloodcrushers of Khorne. That's a big loss. Well, I say that. Leadership, not actually the biggest deal for the Ogres here. They have very good one. And morale in general, much less wonky in Medieval 2 and Beginning of the End Times than it is in Warhammer 2. So you're not going to be seeing those mass routes when the leader dies, typically speaking. At least not with the Ogres, because they do have good morale. But looks like they're going to be able to win that fight against the Khorne Chosen Berserkers. Here, though, definitely going the way of the Blood God, and skulls will be mounted upon the steps of the Brass Citadel. Karneth, very pleased with how this battle is progressing. Win or lose, Khorne has offered up many sacrifices to the Blood God himself, and both sides just focusing on CQB pretty much, getting in up close and personal and murdering each other from close range. So the Hell Cannon did manage to back up and create a little bit more space firing in, and missing on that shot, and honestly has not been particularly accurate. I think we've only seen it hit 2 or 3 times the entirety of this battle, and we've got a really cool duel brewing between a Firebelly and a Chaos Knight as the battle begins to wrap up. A lot of the Ogre infantry just left, and I guess I said there wouldn't really be a mass rout with the Over-Tyrant dying, but it looks like there was, and Daemonkin gonna take the field, but not before we let this duel play out. Now remember, with each of the Dark Gods, there are mirrors to the Dark attributes that dwell within each of them. So, Slanesh, obviously about sex and drugs and rock and roll and pushing pleasure and pain to its maximum. but there are elements of Slaanesh that are good. That pursuit of perfection, that search for artistry and beauty in all things. Well, the Firebelly just beat the crap out of that poor Khorne Chaos Knight, but with Khorne, we felt like, you know what, give that Firebelly the duel he so richly deserves. He has fought well. Khorne is all about being bloodthirsty and power-hungry and malevolent, but there's also that sense of that honor and martial pride that they're all about. And so we're going to let them duel it out, and he's going to win that duel, but as he unleashes some fire towards my Chaos Warriors and actually doesn't kill any of them, then we get mad and say, okay, it's time for you to die. Charge in, bring down the Firebelly, bring down the Ogres, and take the battlefield once and for all. So, beginning in the end times, ladies and gentlemen, fun mod, not the only battle I played. This is OG content right here. This was actually, when I started doing Call of Warhammer 1.5 stuff, is really when the channel began to take off a bit. So, very fun to return to this and do some more content on it. And of course, Ogres and Daemonkin, not yet in Total War Warhammer series, but they will be. Looking at stats, yeah, well actually in Game 3, it's going to be all about them, which is going to be an absolute blast, and I'm incredibly looking forward to it. So, we're taking a look, and the Bloodcrushers and Skullcrushers put the team on their back. They were brutal, although to be fair, their kind of inflated kill counts were in large part due to the Noblar meat shields they were cycle charging in the back lines. But they did take down the Rhinox Riders, which each of those models is worth 100 Noblars in and of themselves. And that monstrous cavalry fight was a great look at what things might be like in Total War Warhammer 3. Some of the best cavalry in the entirety of the setting going toe-to-toe will be pretty amazing. So, awesome game. Hope you enjoyed it. We will be doing some more Beginning of the End Times content very soon, maybe Chaos Dwarves and Lizards. See you next time. Peace out.